Okay, so where I have gone through the whole process of strategic planning. And so I have talked at length on how to develop, to do a SWOT, and not just do a regular SWOT. So he's still connected to me right now, right? You're sharing the desktop?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ali, what I've done so far, what I've done is I have done the SWOT for your information, the software I'm using is called WebEx, and we use it in the United States. It's by Cisco and this. And I have used it to do conferences, teleconferences, all over the United States. And I am going to use it in a couple of weeks because I can't be at the conference. I'm in Istanbul, and there's a conference in the United States. I'm supposed to be there, and so I'm going to use it. So you may want, this is something your university may want to use. So right now, Mohammed Ali is in Warsaw and he's watching this presentation. And everything that's on my screen you will be able to see. And you can also hear me and you can also text me. Or if I put the headphones on, you can talk to me. So when we talk about strategic planning, the point that I made, just to summarize very quickly, because today I want to finish this chapter and I want to, tomorrow is your exam, right? And I want to start my lecture on Islamic business ethics today. So I don't know how many of you are interested in that. If you're not, you can leave after we do the strategic planning one. Unfortunately, because I finished a lot of it, I'm not going to go over it in detail